Petra, predictions in
Group A, I think between Italy and Germany, there will be a significance. But if it's Germany that is in this group, then I see Germany comfortably topping the group, qualifying for the World Cup directly, and then Slovakia coming second, reaching the playoffs. I could see Germany winning all 6 of their games in this one. Like, Germany's such on a strong rebuild, and the nations in this group just aren't strong enough. In terms of Slovakia, Northern Ireland, I think it could be like close, but Slovakia does have far more quality for some time as well compared to Northern Ireland. With Northern Ireland, it's only really been this recent Nations League they've been looking okay with much lower caliber nations, so we'll have to see really. I could see Northern Ireland drawing to Slovakia in Belfast or something. Though, if it's Italy that is in this group, I think they will struggle. I actually could see them struggling a bit in this group. But I do see Italy still just about maybe in the final kind of 2 last match days, but Italy topping the group, qualifying directly for the World Cup, and Slovakia still reaching the playoffs. I just don't think Italy are all that, but surely Italy cannot go 3 consecutive World Cups not qualifying or not topping their World Cup qualifying group. Group B, this is going to be the most competitive, the most even, and the highest quality evenly amongst all the teams in this whole World Cup qualifiers in Europe. I think this will be a really strong group, a really interesting one to watch. There'll be a lot of points taken off each other amongst all the teams. The only team I don't think that stands a chance is Kosovo, to be honest. They are clearly the weakest link, but they could trip up some of the other teams genuinely. With this, it's a hard one to predict, but I'm going to go with Sweden topping the group, qualifying directly for the World Cup, and then Switzerland coming in second, reaching the playoffs. Yes, Switzerland have really mastered qualifiers and they've been topping their group of recent well. But this Sweden team is looking really attacking, considering, Sweden's more built on the defensive foundations. They're growing as a team. There's a lot of players in form, a lot of good quality players coming through for Sweden now. And yeah, the last Euro qualifiers, they did quite bad. But when you look at it, they had Belgium and a really peaking Austria in their group too. So that was quite difficult to judge, but they're really on the rise. And even Slovenia, honestly, they can definitely win against Switzerland or Sweden on their day. A lot of S's in this group. Group C, considering there's more teams in a pot and with there being more groups and kind of it, stretching out and that, I guess you could call this a group of death for World Cup qualifiers, because it's got the strongest pot 3 team in my opinion in Scotland. And Greece are an underrated pot 2 team. I think they're really on the rise. So this group will be very competitive. The pot 1 team I think will make a huge difference, because if it's Portugal, I see them topping the group, qualifying for the World Cup directly, but I don't see them winning all their games. I think they'll be really challenged. And then I see Scotland being in second, reaching the playoffs. But still, it's going to be really competitive between those 3 teams. Belarus, it could even come down to goal difference of who can score more goals against Belarus at this point. Since Portugal hosted Euros 2004, there's been 10 qualifying tournaments they've competed in, and only in 4 of those 10 have they successfully topped their group. 2 other occasions they actually finished second place, but they did qualify. That was Euros 2008 and Euros 2020, where second place in those phases also qualified directly. But on 4 other separate occasions, they've only managed to qualify via playoffs. So if we really think of it, mathematically, Portugal, most of the time, mathematically, have not topped their group. And yes, of course, they're deservedly a pot 1 team. They're such an elite side, and they seem to be getting stronger and stronger as the years go on, and the depth in their squad. But qualifiers is evidently a place Portugal have had their difficulties, and depending on what group, like I said before, they get, I think they could have difficulties in this World Cup qualifiers too. Now, if it's Denmark, the pot one team, then I think the group is even more wide open. Like, I think that changes so much. And genuinely, if it's Denmark, the pot one team, I actually see Scotland topping the group and qualifying directly for the World Cup, and then Denmark coming in second, reaching the playoffs. So really different scenarios depending on the pot one team. And Denmark, they have qualified for tournaments of recent, but the last two tournaments, they haven't been as good. And in the qualifiers, they haven't been so consistent, and they've been given the kind of pot one team and have shown, they can have their issues potentially, but they are still a strong team. But I think Scotland are literally getting stronger and stronger when they're in the tournament. That's a whole different story of how they flop. But when it comes to qualifiers and these kinds of home and away round robins, they do well, Scotland. They're really on the rise. And even in the last Nations League, on the final match, they managed to not get directly relegated. They picked up an important away win against Poland, a win against Croatia, which helped them, draw against Portugal. Like, really, they are building. And Greece, we cannot forget about Greece. Loki, they have been rising. Well, they've been doing really well, and they're just getting better and better. Group D, regardless of who the pot one team is, I do see France or Croatia topping the group, qualifying directly for the World Cup, and then Ukraine coming in second, reaching the playoffs. This group, I could see it being very like pot one team coming first, pot two second, pot three third, pot four fourth. But if it's Croatia in the group, I think Ukraine and Iceland will test and push Croatia, as Croatia can struggle to break down teams. Even France actually struggles to break down defensive teams. I just feel like Croatia would drop more points than France if they were in this group. And let's be honest, Ukraine are the masters of reaching the playoffs. 5 World Cup playoffs they've reached and not won any of them. So if they reach the playoffs again, they probably won't win it, sadly. Group E, regardless of the pot one nation, again, I do see Spain or Netherlands topping the group, to be honest. If it's Spain, I could see them doing comfortably. If it's Netherlands, I think they'll be really pushed by the teams in this group, but they have enough within the kind of 6 games to do it, to be honest. Second spot, though, this is quite tricky. I'm going to go with Turkey, though. Georgia, will push Turkey. They could actually get second spot. But the reason I'm saying Turkey is because I could imagine like Turkey winning against Georgia and then Georgia win against Turkey in the reverse fixture. But I think Turkey will have a better chance against especially Netherlands, but potentially Spain as well. They could pick up a draw against that pot one team, and maybe the goal deficit. So with Georgia, I think they're really competitive actually, and one day I think they will be a pot two team, but against like the really high caliber teams like we saw in the last Euros and last Euro qualification, they concede too many goals, and I don't think Turkey will concede as many goals. So it could really be down to goal difference for that second spot. And hey, even Bulgaria could trip up Georgia for sure, Turkey for sure. Group F, if it's Portugal, the pot one team, I could see Portugal topping the group very comfortably, reaching the World Cup directly, and then Hungary coming in second, reaching the playoff spot. I could see Portugal winning all 6 of their games, to be honest. Hungary has a really bad record against Portugal, and I don't really see there being much in that. But if it's Denmark, which is unlikely, but it is possible. If it's Denmark, the pot one team, well, I mean, some of you guys are going to be like, oh, you're biased, perse, modior vodiok, but it will be far more competitive, though. I will put my bias aside, whatnot. But yeah, I think Denmark would top the group qualifying directly for the World Cup, and then Hungary still coming in second, reaching the playoff round. But I could see it being really close. I could see points being taken off each other with the teams. But with Hungary, I could I could see Hungary like winning against Denmark, but also drawing or slipping up to Ireland. Like that's so Hungarian, to be honest. But I think it'll be really competitive if it's Denmark. Yeah, yeah, and even Ireland, have their bits to take points off the top two teams. Group G, regardless of the pot one team, I think this will be a very straightforward group. I see Spain or Netherlands topping their group, qualifying directly for the World Cup, and then Poland coming in second, reaching the playoff. I see this group being very much like pot one comes first, pot two comes second, pot three third, etc. Though, for Netherlands or Spain, this is going to be a really defensive-minded group. Group H, wow. This has got to be the most unpredictable group this whole qualifier. Some people would be like, this is a joke of a group. I think this is an amazing group. It will be so entertaining to watch, actually. I think it'll be really competitive, actually. And I'm just going to say it. I see Romania topping the group, qualifying directly for the World Cup, and Austria coming in second, reaching the playoff. Now, Austria is by far the strongest team in this group. They've clearly got the best players, the most attractive football. But as I said earlier, with pot one teams that didn't qualify for World Cups, the kind of nations that aren't, like established pot one teams, I find they are the ones that tend to struggle in qualifiers. And I could see this happening with Austria. Like, when we knew the seedings, I and probably many of you did think whoever's got Austria in their group could stand a chance. And yes, Austria has been handed a simple group. They could have been handed a far more difficult group. But I feel like Austria will crack under the pressure. They will be the one having to control all 8 of their games, really, with the possession and that. And sometimes that's daunting of a challenge. And we saw in the last Nations League, actually, where Austria really should have topped their group. They didn't, actually. And even when Norway tripped up, they still didn't top their group. And Romania... the reason I say them top in the group is they are actually solid. Like, I know at times they can look really like, what are you doing? But Romania has been building for the past couple of years, and they've shown they can compete against nations that a bit higher than them, like Austria. They can really cause trouble. And to be honest with you, Bosnia-Herzegovina, they do not have a better chance than this one now to really either return to the World Cup or to just really make their mark. Like, I think they can compete against Austria and Romania if they're on form. But so I really think for those top 3, it's really open, actually, more than people realize. And I think it, could really come down to a point, potentially goal difference, but it's Austria's to lose this group. Since the 1998 World Cup qualifiers in Euro, there has always been at least one pot nation that does not qualify for the tournament in general. And I know sometimes we'll look at it that the teams are debatable whether they're pot one, but also there has always been at least one pot nation that does not qualify directly and needed the playoffs to qualify. The 1998 World Cup qualifiers in Europe, you had Sweden and Russia that were pot one teams that did not qualify for the World Cup, and Italy actually needed the playoffs in those qualifiers to qualify for that World Cup. In the 2002 World Cup qualifiers, you had Romania, Norway, Netherlands, Czechia, and former Republic of Yugoslavia, which is majority Serbia, but also today's Montenegro, Kosovo, that did not qualify. And actually Germany, the finalists of that World Cup, needed the playoffs to qualify, actually. And the 2006 World Cup qualifiers, Turkey was the pot one team that did not qualify, but Spain and Czechia needed the playoffs in order to qualify for that World Cup. In the last two World Cups I mentioned, it was based on coefficient as opposed to FIFA rankings, which I know someone like Norway or Romania is debatable of if they are that pot one team. But if you looked, kind of historically of how they did in qualifiers, it was justified. In the 2010 World Cup qualifiers, you had Croatia and Czechia from pot one not qualifying for the tournament, and Portugal and France actually needed the playoffs to qualify. And as we know, France qualified very controversially for that World Cup. And the 2014 World Cup, you had Norway that did not qualify for the World Cup, which, yeah, it's very debatable why they were a pot one team anyway, but it was still the FIFA rankings. And you had Portugal again and Greece that needed the playoffs in order to qualify for that World Cup. The 2018 World Cup qualifiers, pot one teams that didn't qualify was Netherlands, Romania, Wales. Yes, I know it's a bit debatable how Romania, Wales were pot one, but I do remember because they did the qualifying draw during the Euro 2016 qualifiers actually. And then Romania was like undefeated during qualifiers, so that kind of how they build up their ranks in their group. And then Wales, I remember, because this is when essentially Wales started to be on the global stage. We drew against Belgium and also won against Belgium in Cardiff. So that's how Wales climbed up the ranks. And you've got to remember how the FIFA rankings work, in that Belgium, have been like a top three team for a long time. If you're beating an opponent that's ranked higher than you, the points difference adds up quite significantly. And Croatia, who were the finalists of the 2018 World Cup, needed the playoffs actually to qualify. And Italy missed out. Remember the first of their World Cups, they missed out for like absolute decades. Okay, they were a pot two team, but still, an elite nation missed out. And the 2022 World Cup qualifiers, you had Italy again, who were a pot one team this time, but Italy missed out again. And you had Portugal needing the playoffs again. So that was within 4 World Cup qualifiers. Portugal could only qualify through the playoffs on 3 of those occasions. Really significant stuff. Group I see this being a very straightforward group. I see Italy or Germany, doesn't matter which one, but I see them topping the group, reaching the World Cup directly, and then Norway coming in second, reaching the playoff round. Not much to say in this group. I think it's pretty predictable, to be honest. Group J, Belgium and Wales are playing each other again. After these qualifiers, Belgium and Wales would have played each other 11 times in competitive matches in a span of like 10 years. Or just over that. That's actually insane when you really think of it. So evidently this is a new international rivalry. But I do see Belgium topping the group, qualifying directly for the World Cup, and then Wales reaching the playoff in second again, actually. It's just frustrating because Belgium are on the decline. I don't think they're nowhere near as good as their golden generation were. I mean, they're still, a quality side, but if you had to have a pot one team, it would be Belgium. But the thing is, I feel like with Wales, and having watched them myself numerous of times, we've got some banana skin away games, as one of my friends put it. As in, some of the away games, Wales are prone to slip up, especially say like Kazakhstan away. If Wales have played in Cardiff, then need to go to Kazakhstan after a hard game in Cardiff or something like. I could see Wales drawing that, to be honest, or something like that. Whereas Belgium, they still got the quality where the pot 3, 4 and 5 teams, they will easily beat. I think that's what it is. It'll still be really close for that second spot, but that's where I see Wales slipping a little bit. Group K, England, man, another simple qualifiers group. Yes, the last Euro qualifiers was a group of death they were in, but this is such a big difference. This is such a simple group. I guess England will need to learn how to break down teams. But the biggest talk in this group is, how is Serbia and Albania in a group again? Like, This cannot happen. Like, the footballing world needs to stop this. It's as bad as putting like Azerbaijan and Armenia together, which they don't put together, by the way. This is horrendous. Because in Euro 2016 qualifiers, Serbia and Albania met each other, actually. And then there was that whole issue with the Serbian player pulling down a pro-Albanian nationalistic drone. And then Serbia had to forfeit that match 3-0, kind of why Albania qualified for that Euros, to be honest. And I think this thing might happen again, where one of the teams is going to have to forfeit. I mean, I see England comfortably topping the group in first, qualifying directly for the World Cup. I mean, I would say Serbia to come second, reaching the playoff spot, but because of this whole like political thing and Serbia having to give up points quite recently in international football, I mean, it could be Albania coming second. I mean, say both games are played behind closed doors and there's nothing to do with it, like, say the politics, somehow wasn't involved, then Serbia, I see, coming in second, reaching the playoff spot. And the reason I guess I would say that is because I think Albania would be more prone to slipping up against the pot 4 and 5 teams. Finally, onto the 12th group in European qualifiers, which sounds mad actually, Group L. I see this being a straightforward group of either France or Croatia topping the group relatively comfortably, directly qualifying for the World Cup, and then Czechia coming in second, reaching that playoff spot. Nothing in this really. I see this being like, again, pot 1 coming first, pot 2 coming second, etc. kind of group. If my predictions are correct, then the remaining 4 spots for the playoffs would go to UEFA Nations League group winners. And, many of the group winners would have qualified at least for the playoff anyway. But so in the order, it would be North Macedonia, Northern Ireland, Moldova, and San Marino would take up those 4 spots. That is actually absurd. Like, which nations get these spots? And whichever nation gets Moldova or San Marino, that's kind of a joke, to be honest. I guess they really just wanted giggles at this point. But it's such an advantage to have a weaker team. There you have my predictions for the 2026 World Cup qualifiers in Europe. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Who do you think could be a surprise nation, not from pot 1, that can qualify directly for the World Cup? How do you think these World Cup qualifiers will plan out? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.